Welcome to This Week in Royal History, where we take a look at the captivating stories of royals from around the world, across various centuries, and explore the impact they had on history and society. Through their triumphs and tragedies, these royals shaped the world we live in today, leaving behind legacies that continue to inspire and intrigue us. So sit back, relax, and journey with us through time as we explore the enchanting and sometimes tragic lives of the royals who have captivated our hearts and imaginations throughout the ages.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.
Leopold of Babenberg was born on the 15th of October, 1176, as the younger son of Leopold V, Duke of Austria, and Helena of Hungary. When his father died in 1194, the territory of Austria was split. His elder brother became Frederick I, Duke of Austria, and Leopold became Duke of Styria. However, Frederick died 4 years later, and the territories were united again under Leopold VI. Leopold was a member of the House of Babenberg, and Babenbergian Austria reached its zenith during his reign. In 1221, he raised Vienna to the status of a city and doubled the size of its territory. In 1203, Leopold married Theodora Angelina, a Byzantine princess, and they had 7 children, though not all lived to adulthood. Leopold died on the 28th of July in 1230 and was buried in Lilienfeld Abbey in Lower Austria. On the same day Thomas Cromwell was executed, Henry VIII of England married his wife, the young Catherine Howard, on the 28th of July, 1540, at Oatlands Palace. She was most likely still in her teens, and Henry was almost 50 years old. The marriage was made public in August, and the couple went on a royal progress through the country. Less than 2 years later, Catherine would be executed by beheading. On the 28th of July, 1683, the future Queen Anne of Great Britain married Prince George of Denmark in the Chapel Royal. The marriage was arranged as an Anglo-Danish alliance, but they were devoted and faithful to each other. They were given apartments at the Palace of Whitehall for their London residence. Anne would be pregnant 17 times, but only one child would survive. However, he died at the age of 11. Princess Ingeborg was born sometime in 1174 to Vladimir I of Denmark and Sophia of Minsk. In August 1193, she married Philippe II of France, who rejected her the day after the wedding. Ingeborg fled to a convent to avoid being sent back to Denmark and protested to the Pope. Philip attempted to draw up a false family tree to show that they were closely related, and a council declared their marriage void. Ingeborg's brother, King Canute VI of Denmark, sent a delegation to the Pope, who saw the false family tree and declared the annulment invalid, and told Philip he was not to marry again. However, Philip did not follow and married again in 1196 to Agnes of Merania. By 1198, the Pope declared the marriage invalid. Ingeborg spent the next few years a prisoner between various French castles, and Philip was excommunicated in 1200 for not renouncing Agnes and taking back Ingeborg. Ingeborg was reconciled with Philip in 1213, which he was doing for political gain in England. Philip died in 1223, and his son from his first marriage, Louis VIII, recognized Ingeborg as a legitimate queen. Ingeborg then spent her time in a priory that she founded, where she died on the 29th of July, 1237, around the age of 63. 4 years after their meeting, Mary, Queen of Scots, and Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley, married on the 29th day in July, 1565, at Holyrood Palace. They were first cousins, as they were both grandchildren of Margaret Tudor, a sister to Henry VIII of England. Henry was English-born, and his parents were Scottish aristocrats. This marriage would bring the only child for Mary, the future James VI and First of Scotland, England, and Ireland. Maria Theresa was born on the 10th of September, 1638, in Spain to Philippe IV of Spain and Elizabeth of France. She was a member of the House of Habsburg and was titled Archduchess of Austria and Spain. Maria Theresa was heir presumptive to the Spanish Empire at different times throughout her childhood, until the birth of her half-brother, Charles. She was to marry Louis XIV of France, but she had to renounce her rights to the Spanish succession and the rights of any future children born to her and Louis. Maria Theresa and Louis were double first cousins. Her father and her mother were siblings, and his father and her mother were siblings. In June 1660, Maria Theresa and Louis married. They had 6 children, but only their eldest son, Louis, would survive to adulthood. Maria Theresa took little part in politics and spent much of her time at court playing cards. However, she did act as regent at 3 different times when Louis was away on military campaigns. She tolerated his mistresses and was left to her own devices while at court. Maria Theresa died on the 30th of July, 1683, after a painful illness at the age of 44. She was buried at the Basilica of St. Denis. Since the large dowry expected upon their marriage was never secured, the renunciation of her descendants to the Spanish throne was null and void. Therefore, her grandson would become Philip V of Spain through her lineage. Alfred Ernest Elbert was born on the 6th of August, 1844, to Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom and Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha at Windsor Castle. He was their 4th child and 2nd son. Alfred would remain second in line behind his elder brother until 1864, when his brother had his first son. He entered the Royal Navy at the age of 12, and by 1866 he was promoted to captain. In May 1866, on the Queen's birthday, Alfred was created Duke of Edinburgh, Earl of Ulster, and Earl of Kent. Alfred traveled extensively as a captain, becoming the first member of the royal family to visit Australia and New Zealand. In 1869, he visited Hawaii, Japan, and India on his trip around the world. Alfred married Grand Duchess Maria Alexandrova of Russia, the only surviving daughter of Emperor Alexander II, at the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. Maria was not well received in England, and they did not enjoy a happy marriage. However, they did have 7 children, though not all lived to adulthood. In August 1893, Alfred's uncle, Ernest II, Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, died, and the duchy went to Alfred. His elder brother, the Prince of Wales, had already renounced his claim. Alfred died on the 30th of July in 1900 of throat cancer, a year after his only son died. His mother, Queen Victoria, outlived him by 6 months. He was buried at the family mausoleum in Coburg. Maximilian was born on this day in 1527 to Ferdinand, Archduke of Austria, and Anne of Bohemia and Hungary in Vienna. He was their eldest son and second child. At the time of his birth, his father had succeeded as King of Bohemia and Hungary, taking the throne after Maximilian's uncle died. In September 1548, Maximilian married his first cousin, Maria of Spain, daughter to his uncle, Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor. The marriage was to strengthen the Spanish Habsburgs. Maximilian and his brother-in-law/cousin, Philip II of Spain, had an ongoing rivalry throughout their lives. In 1562, he was named King of the Romans as heir to the Holy Roman Empire, and in 1564, he succeeded his father as Maximilian II, Holy Roman Emperor. Maximilian and Maria had 16 children, though not all lived to adulthood. Their eldest daughter, Anne of Austria, was to go on to marry her uncle, Philip II of Spain, and their daughter, Elizabeth, would become Queen of France as wife of Charles IX. While Maximilian was raised a Catholic and a Habsburg, he approached the Lutheran states to attempt to repair the schism, which ultimately failed. He died on the 12th of October, 1576, at the age of 40, while preparing to invade Poland. He was buried in Prague. Augusta Frederica was born on this day in 1737 as the eldest child to Frederick, Prince of Wales, and Princess Augusta of Saxe-Gotha at St. James's Palace. She was second in line to the British throne behind her father for a year until her brother George was born, the future George III. In January 1764, Augusta married Charles William Ferdinand, hereditary Prince of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel. They would go on to have 7 children, and again, not all lived to adulthood. Augusta never adapted to life in the German courts and was fully English in all her tastes and manners, even after 25 years of marriage. When her husband began taking mistresses, she retired from court to focus on raising her children and her religious studies. In 1780, she became Duchess Consort of Brunswick-Lüneburg after the death of her father-in-law. Her husband died in 1806 after being appointed commander-in-chief of the Prussian army against Napoleon's French army, in which the Prussian army was defeated. She fled to London in 1807 and set up at Brunswick House, where she died on the 23rd of March, 1813, at the age of 75. She was buried at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. Interesting fact, Augusta's daughter, Caroline, was married to George IV of Great Britain. Edmund of Langley was born on the 5th of June, 1341, to Edward III of England and Philippe of Hainault at King's Langley Palace. He was their 4th surviving son. Edmund married Isabel of Castile in July 1372, and they had 3 children. In August 1385, he was created Duke of York, the first to hold that title. Edmund is the founder of the House of York that rivaled the House of Lancaster during the Wars of the Roses. Through his youngest son, Richard of Königsberg, 3rd Earl of Cambridge, he was a great-grandfather to Edward IV and Richard III, and ancestor to all English monarchs beginning with Henry VIII, whose mother, Elizabeth of York, was Edmund's great-great-granddaughter. Edmund died on the 1st of August in 1402 and was buried at King's Langley Priory. His tomb was moved in 1575 to All Saints Church in King's Langley after the priory was dissolved. Future Queen Anne was born on the 6th of February, 1665, at St. James's Palace, to James, Duke of York, and Anne Hyde. At the time of her birth, her father's elder brother, Charles II, was King of England. Anne and her elder sister Mary were raised Anglican, and on the recommendation of their uncle, due to their father's suspected Roman Catholicism. Anne married Prince George of Denmark in July 1683 in the Chapel Royal. In 1685, her father succeeded the English, Irish, and Scottish throne as James II and VII. However, only 3 years later, he was deposed by Anne's elder sister, Mary, and her husband, William of Orange, during the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Mary and William ruled jointly, and after Mary's death in 1694 and William's death in 1702, Anne became queen, as they had no children. On the 1st of May, 1707, the Acts of Union passed, uniting the kingdoms of England and Scotland into Great Britain. And Anne continued to reign at the time as Queen of Great Britain and Ireland. After battling ill health most of her life, Anne died on the 1st of August in 1714, 2 days after she had a stroke. She was buried at the Henry VII Chapel next to her husband and children in Westminster Abbey. Anne was the last Stuart monarch to rule England and Scotland. Henry III of France was born on the 19th of September, 1551, to Henry II of France and Catherine de' Medici. He was their 4th son and 6th child, not expected to inherit the throne. In 1560, he was created Duke of Orleans and Duke of Angoulême, and in 1566, Duke of Anjou. In his youth, he was fond of reading and the arts rather than hunting and exercise, a change from his 3 elder brothers and their father. Henry was a favorite son of his mother's. He was considered as a husband for Queen Elizabeth I of England in 1570, but she was 18 years older than him, and it was not followed through on. In 1573, Henry was elected as King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania. However, by 1575, his older brothers had all died, and he left Poland to return to France, therefore losing his Polish throne. Henry was crowned Henry III of France in 1575 and married Louise of Lorraine on the 14th of February. They would have no children. In 1584, Henry's heir and younger brother, Francis, died. As France followed the Salic law, no females could inherit, and the heir to the throne became his cousin, Henry of Navarre, who was Protestant. Henry III was assassinated on the 2nd of August, 1589, by a Dominican friar who had false papers and got close enough to the king to stab him. On his deathbed, Henry told his men to be loyal to the new king. He was buried at the Basilica of St. Denis and was the last of the Valois kings. Philippe Charles was born on the 2nd of August in 1674 to Philippe I, Duke of Orleans, and Elizabeth Charlotte of the Palatine. His father was the younger brother of Louis XIV of France. Philippe was educated with some of the best teachers in the kingdom and made his first appearance at the Palace of Versailles at the age of 10. Philippe joined the military and saw his first battle in 1691. He would continue in the military throughout his life, fighting in the War of Spanish Succession and helping consolidate Spain under Bourbon rule. In February 1692, married his first cousin, Françoise Marie de Bourbon, the youngest legitimized daughter of Louis XIV and his mistress, Marquise de Montespan, at the chapel in the Palace of Versailles. Their marriage was unhappy, but they did have 8 children. In 1701, he became Duke of Orleans at the death of his father. When Louis XIV died in 1715, he was succeeded by his 5-year-old great-grandson, Louis XV. At that time, Philippe was confirmed as the regent of France until 1723, when Louis came of age. Philippe died on the 2nd of December, 1723, at 49 years old, and was buried at the Basilica of St. Denis. Future James II of Scotland was born on the 16th of October, 1430, at Holyrood Abbey, to James I of Scotland and Joan Beaufort, just after his twin brother, Alexander. Before his first birthday, his twin brother had died, and James became heir apparent, receiving the title Duke of Rothesay. In February 1437, James I was assassinated, and 6-year-old James succeeded him. He was crowned at Holyrood Abbey in March 1437. 3 families fought to gain control of the young king: the Crichtons, the Livingstons, and the Douglases. The strong central authority James I had put in place quickly crumbled. In 1449, 19-year-old James married 15-year-old Mary of Guelders, which greatly improved relations between Scotland and France. They had 6 children. That same year, James gained control of the kingdom when he came of age. He seized the Livingston estates in retaliation for the arrest of his mother in 1439 that the Livingstons had organized. In 1452, his peace with the Douglas family ended when he murdered William, 8th Earl of Douglas. A civil war broke out between James and the Douglases that ultimately ended in James demolishing their castles and seizing their vast lands for Scotland. He was finally about to set up a strong central government with the revenue brought from these lands. James died on the 3rd of August, 1460, at 29 years old, when a cannon exploded near him during the siege of Roxburgh Castle. He was succeeded by his 9-year-old son, James III. After Roxburgh Castle was taken by the Scots, his wife Mary ordered its destruction. James was buried at Holyrood Abbey. And that concludes this week in royal history. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned a little bit about some royals in history that you didn't know before. As you've likely already gathered, I recently returned from a trip to England, and I couldn't have enjoyed myself more. I'm planning a trip back, but I want to take you with me. If you're already overseas, you can join me there. If you're interested in joining a tour of England with me, feel free to reach out on social media or email me at rebecca@tudorsdynasty.com. I look forward to hearing from you. I'm Rebecca Larson. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Tudors Dynasty Podcast. You can follow and support the Tudors Dynasty Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon @Tudors Dynasty.